lot of cool things happening Saturday, but the coolest thing is we get to play football again, and we're excited for it. We've got a very tough opponent. Coach Norvell has done a really good job of building that program back up at Colorado State. They were, I know that 5-7 last year, but there was a lot of close games that could have went either way. They've got a very explosive offense that likes to throw the ball around, a dynamic receiver in Torrey Horton, as well as him being a kick returner, a veteran offensive line with a couple grad transfers, a very veteran defense with two really good safeties, all conference safeties that have played a lot of football, and a very intricate special teams unit. Very well coached team. They tax you mentally as well as tax you physically. And this is going to take a great week of preparation from our players, not only physically but mentally, because they're going to get challenged in all three phases.
An exciting time indeed for Longhorns fans. They're going to play football finally. They're going to kick off the season at 2:30 p.m. on Saturday against the Colorado State Rams here at home at DKR Tex Memorial Stadium. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Billy Gates, and this is the Horns Report. And here to talk about the season opener for the Longhorns is Sports Director Roger Wallace. Roger, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate you. And so, Steve just kind of told us how pumped he was to get this season finally started. It seems like, training camp started years ago from how much we've been covering it. But what's exciting about this season to you? Like, kind of. What kind of feel does this season have for you?
Well, we haven't had this feel in a long time. You have to think back to 2008 and 2009, that stretch when so much was expected of Texas. So I guess now to see what it looks like compared to what people think it's going to look like, and a lot of that is what happened last year, not just winning the Big 12, but getting into the college football playoff. So, yeah, Sark sat down this morning with a huge grin on his face, and he's a self-proclaimed college football junkie and loves everything about it. And he joked that the players might be more excited than the fans, quite frankly. It might be 50-50. I think the fans are pretty excited. But you certainly understand what he means, because they've been grinding it out for not just a month of training camp. Let's be honest. This all started as soon as they got back from the break after the loss to Washington. Yeah. So, certainly they're fired up about it, but fans as well. College football is here. They get to play on Saturday, and he loves to remind you, like every coach, you only get so many of these chances, and we spend more time talking about it from Sunday through Friday, and then finally game day comes, and you feel like it's a holiday every Saturday.
I know this year, especially for us here at KXAN, we're entering a new partnership with the university, with the football program, giving them all kinds of coverage on our family of stations, KXAN, KBVO, and the CW Austin. Roger, you had a chance to sit down with Coach Sarkisian for an exclusive interview that aired, I believe, on Saturday after the Cowboys-Chargers preseason game. Just from that interview, like what kind of sense did you get from Steve, talking about everything you guys talked about?
Yeah, and the first is just kind of his comfort level with something that, he was hoping he could get to when he took this job. Coming from Alabama, he's seen it. That's as big as it gets, the run that he was part of the tail end with Nick Saban, but getting Texas back to the point where not only are there the expectations, because that comes every year regardless of what happens, but now nationally they are considered one of the top programs in the nation. So he kind of built that, and now in year 4, see if he can maintain it, take another step, and get to the point where this is a team they're talking about for a national championship. I think people are talking about it. Obviously, a lot of questions, but just the fact that he's comfortable and being able to build it. 11 draft picks. See Xavier Worthy right there. So that's something he wanted, and that's something we forget a little bit, Billy, how important that is to a head coach, because that's such a great recruiting sell. Because all these kids want to play at the next level. Now you're seeing 11 guys off last year's roster. He said we probably should have 10 as an average number every year. Some years it might, increase a little. Some it might dip a little depending on circumstances. So it's kind of twofold. Winning, turning out NFL players, you're going to attract better talent.
Right.
But just how comfortable I think he is with what he has built here and the expectations, and he doesn't shy away from talking about it. Reminds me a lot of Augie Garrido.
Sure.
He always was more than happy to talk about the expectations.
Yeah, and we all know how good of a coach Augie was, right?
Exactly.
For real. So before we can even get to that point, they got to take care of business Saturday against the Colorado State team finished 5-7 last year in the Mountain West. Just kind of ho hum, a little bit pedestrian like. But Sarkisian stressed that this team is a good team under Coach Mike Norvell that's recently moved over there. I mean, they're a good team that's going to present some issues. I mean, I know we're going to get into kind of the X's and O's here later in the week, but just sort of like a high level sort of expectation, Colorado State. I mean, what do you think the Rams are going to come out and do?
Yeah, well, first of all, they've got an All-American receiver in Torrey Horton. So right there, they've got some high-level talent. With the transfer portal, Billy, it's hard to judge on what they did last year because Sark talked today about they picked up some interior linemen out of the portal. They have a young freshman from Aledo at quarterback, Braden Nicolisi, who threw for over 3,000 yards. So now he's going to be more comfortable. Jay Norvell has a little history at Texas, just 1 year, but he was here in 2015, and he recruits Texas hard. He was a longtime assistant at Oklahoma. You can see his roster starting to take shape with some Texas transfers, bringing some from Nevada where he coached before Colorado State. And yeah, I don't think this is, even though it's a 32.5-point spread as of Monday. Yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons that Sark's concerned. The other one is simply mistakes, and they don't get a preseason. Everything they do is against each other. So what kind of mistakes are they going to make? Are they going to put the ball on the ground? Turnovers at the wrong time? Special teams. So they have a lot to worry about, and I think in the opener it's heightened regardless of. Funny, today, Billy, there was not one question about what's going to happen a week from Saturday. Right. And I think that's where we are in college football now. I think that's kind of an older attitude about looking ahead. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Speaking of Michigan, of course.
Right. Yeah. Of course, talking about Michigan, that Week 2 showdown that's going to be the biggest game in college football for that week. Absolutely. We've been talking with Steve and some of the coaches leading up to here. Colorado State's air raid offense, it's kind of sort of like shades of like Texas Tech, Mike Leach a little bit. I mean, is that kind of fair to say? They're going to spread teams out. They're going to try to whip the ball around the field. And we have talked about how Texas needs to improve their pass defense over seasons past, especially last year where they got gashed quite a bit through the year. I mean, is this sort of like early benchmark for them to try to hold down this offense that's going to throw it, maybe 40 times?
I don't think there's any way Jay Norvell thinks he's going to come in here and win unless he does just that and spread them out. Hope they can get some bad matchups. Hope Texas misses some tackles and they take care of the ball. I can't imagine they think they can win it consistently between the tackles and the trenches. So sure, I think that's what's going to happen. There was a lot of questions last year, as you mentioned, secondary. Then one of the big concerns for coaches is tackling in that first game. So now you get some high quality specialists and skill players. You get them in space and see what happens. Flip side is Colorado State's got to defend Texas's skill guys and Quinn Ewers and that new receiving core, along with some guys that have been around. And Jaden Blue's going to be so explosive, I think, if he can stay healthy. So yeah, I think that's the key. And I'm sure Jay Norvell's saying we got to get some free possessions. We got to take it away. We got to do something on special teams to create a few more possessions.
And you mentioned those receivers that Texas got through the transfer portal, Isaiah Bond, Silas Bolden, and Matthew Golden. Mm-hmm. They also grabbed a running back from the transfer portal just recently to help kind of rebuild depth after the injuries to C.J. Baxter, Christian Clark, a guy from SMU who they kind of added on like very recently, like 4 days ago.
Yeah, Veldon Gardner was a guy that they were waiting to see if he took care of his graduation so he could be also a grad transfer. But he's a veteran. I can't imagine you'll see much of him on Saturday. No. But the bottom line is if they lose another running back, then all of a sudden that becomes a bigger concern. Ryan Niblitz played some running back in practice. Colin Page is a kid from Anderson High, a walk-on. That has gotten a lot of snaps in practice, but Sark joked about the transfer portal and a lot of complaining, but they were able to essentially go out and get a free agent at the last minute to help that running back room. But I think you're going to see you still have three backs that they really like, and again, as long as they stay healthy, I think there's three backs that can share the snaps. I think Blue's going to be the feature guy, and then you have Jarrett Gibson and Trey Wisner. But yeah, nice luxury to be able to go get somebody, and maybe in a pinch they would need some help.
Yeah. And so as we kind of get going through this week, Roger, I mean, let's just kind of go through like what kind of new programming we're going to have on our broadcast channels. Obviously, we've been doing this Horns Report for the past year now. This will be year 2 of us doing this little dog and pony show on Facebook and online. But what can fans expect from us regarding the Longhorns on KXAN, on the CW, on KBVO this fall?
Yeah, the big one is the Texas Game Day, and that's the official UT pregame show, and that's primarily going to be on KBVO, and that's 1 hour before kick. It will be live. It will be from right here at our studios, and it will feature a couple of Longhorn legends in Alex Okafor, All-American defensive lineman from Pflugerville High, played from 2009 to 12, has a Super Bowl ring with Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, and Dan Neal, who's got 2 Super Bowl rings with the Broncos, not Peyton Manning, John Elway. So Dan Neal goes back to when they went from the Southwest Conference to the Big 12. So he was there for that transition from Southwest Conference to winning the first ever Big 12 championship. And I think it's interesting, a couple of interior guys, Billy, that, you know, the linemen usually are very in tune to everything that's going on, and I think it's going to be some great perspective. So that's 1 hour before kick, so the showtime varies depending on kickoff, 1:30 Saturday on KBVO. Mondays at 11:30, Coach Sark's news conference, that will be on KBVO. And then Friday nights at 9 on KBVO, that will be Longhorn Weekly. A lot of fans know it as the flagship radio network's show with Coach Sark and Craig Way. We'll have that from 9 to 10 on Friday night. So a lot of chances to get some unique content on UT football that obviously we're really fired up about. And then Friday night, my interview with Coach Sark, it did run after the Cowboys game on Saturday, but we're going to run it again Friday at 7 o'clock. And at 7:30, Alex Okafor and Dan Neal will join me in studio. We'll talk about that, get their perspective on Steve Sarkisian. Always interesting to hear what players, and then kind of get into the season and what they like. And again, we talk so much about the guys with the ball, but this Texas offensive line appears to be one of the better units, and nobody better than Dan Neal to talk about it. And then what did they lose big on defense? Well, that interior defensive, with Byron Murphy and Tavondre Sweat. So Alex can get into the details on what he sees. And if you're a Longhorn fan, you're hoping that, those were big names in their NFL, but there were potential big names waiting. We just haven't called their name as often, and that's what the best programs do. Right. So hopefully all that will get you fired up and ready to go.
Yeah, no, we've got you covered. Online, on air, we've got everything. And we'll also be picking back up our Thursday high school football stream here coming up this Thursday. We've got 2 games.
Regional coverage, Billy.
Regional coverage. Regional.
Never happened on our channels.
No,
2 games on Thursday.
2 games on Thursday. The Taco Shack Bowl between Anderson and McCallum. That game is going to be on KBVO, or is that the CW?
CW.
That's the one on the CW.
I know. It's alphabet soup.
That's strange, a little bit. And then we have Westlake and Prosper from Mary Hardin Baylor's Crusader Stadium on KBVO. Typically, we'll have 1 game on Thursday over the air, and then we'll have that Friday Westlake game be streamed. However, since they're both opening the season on Thursday, we're going to put them both on TV.
2 games is better than 1.
What's better than 1 game? It's 2.
That's right.
It's 2. All right. Well, hey, we're going to leave it here for now for this episode of the Horns Report. Thank you so much for watching. For Roger Wallace, I'm Billy Gates, and we'll talk to you again very soon.